A pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Today's guest menu looks like this. Jim Klein-Peter, freelance sports writer. He covers Southern University. We'll be talking some Southern University baseball with Jim Klein-Peter. Then in hour number 2, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network and the SWAC baseball report. And if I'm a nice guy, and usually I'm a nice guy, we'll hear from Dr. Michael Prince. He always has something to talk about, and we appreciate his feedback. The baseball guru himself. I'm still learning this game. And I'll be learning this game until the creator calls me home. But until that time, I'm going to try to absorb as much knowledge as I can. And I won't get it all, but guess what? It'll be fun trying. Gotta love that. Here's what's trending on this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show. Well, she's back. Cynthia Cooper Dykes returns as TSU's women's basketball coach. Second time around. There was a song that said Second Time Around by Shalimar. That's what I thought about when the announcement came down the pipe. So congratulations for the return of Cynthia Cooper Dykes. Returns as TSU women's basketball coach. And let me say this. On the women's side in the conference is always competitive. Now it's still the same. You're going to have some dynamic coaches and some dynamic personalities. I know. You can't wait. Well, you have to wait a while. But, boy, that conference race will be exciting, as always. Kelvin Brothers, head men's basketball coach at Morgan State. That was announced this week. Congratulations to Coach Brothers, head men's basketball coach at Morgan State. Last week, we talked about Grambling State taking one game from Southern University in baseball. Well, they were able to take 2 out of 3. First game, 12-0. Second game, it wasn't a football game, but 21-16. And then Southern University 15-3 to win game 3. First series in conference play that the Jaguars lost today. They'll try to get it done against Prairie View and them Panthers. 4 p.m. in Prairie View. Also site of the 2019 SWAC Track and Field Championship. And by the way, Southern University men, after one day, they're on top with 24 points. Grambling State women with 32. That's what's trending on the Carlos Brown Show. Southern University baseball, and of course I wasn't there in Grambling, Louisiana, but I talked to several people that were in attendance. When you have this type of game with a rival, the cliche says throw the records out. This game was important. Southern University did their damage against Grambling State and Lee Hines Field in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So you know it was going to be a hostile environment. According to my reports, it was a powder keg. Players arguing, umpires, coaches had to be restrained, players had to be restrained. Good old-fashioned rivalry baseball game. And GSU took 2 out of 3. Now, they're solid in that second spot out of the West. Southern University with 1 victory today, they clinched, one victory over Prairie View in a 3-game series. Because, hey, you saw what happened last time at Lee Hines Field. Prairie View came in and took a 10-6 victory over Southern University. So, Southern University needs one game out of 3. Personally, I like a sweep. Personally, I like 2 out of 3. Maybe I'm being a bit greedy, but we'll have a chance to talk to a couple of people about the seedings and how they're pretty much etched in stone. Let me bring in Dr. Michael Prince. Dr. Prince, last week we had a lively discussion about what was going to happen. Mississippi Valley State now ineligible for the SWAC baseball tournament. You knew Alabama A&M was ineligible. We had heard some rumors. We had offered our opinions. Some people agreed, some disagreed. I had even Southernites tell me that, hey, UAPB, that's the only logical thing that you could do. It has to be 8 teams. You got to bring them and put them on the east side. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, my brother. How are you this lovely morning? Even though it's rainy and overcast, it's still a lovely morning because we're alive.
That is true, and we're among the land of the living. And in Satellite B in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, it has been a stormy morning. But other than that, doing very well.
Very good, very good.
Now, this baseball. We had a lively conversation, and I like when people disagree with me. It happens somewhat, not all the time. But I don't think it's, in this situation, we were just talking about what we thought would be a best-case scenario, and the conference will announce, we'll say this again, after this weekend series, what they're going to decide to do as far as the SWAC baseball tournament. Brother Prince, I'm hearing that UAPB will get in and they'll just be put in the East as the 4th seed.
I'm hearing the same echoes, and more than likely that's probably what they'll do. It would, if that be the case, it would be one of those where I agree to disagree. I understand why they're going to more than likely lean in that direction, but when you talk about the integrity of the entire conference, when you talk about how the RPI, they've always been concerned about the RPI and putting credibility back into your conference for baseball and start striking that iron that I've been beating on for the longest about the level playing field, is why I would be against it. But I'm not going to be so against it that I hold my breath till I pass out. You know, you adjust.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, we adjust and move on.
Yeah. And, you know, most of the conversations I had via whether phone call or text message, well, they just, it wouldn't be fair. They basically said that you've had all along 8 teams. Go ahead and put UAPB in there. Now, going forward, I've had discussions, and this is just discussions. They're not going to listen to Carlos Brown. They may listen to you more because you're the baseball guy.
I doubt it.
But going forward, you know, in the perfect world, I would love to see a 16 double elimination tournament like it used to be. And that's kind of, you know, some of the conversations. And most of the people that I've talked to, if the bylaws are changed, they're all for it.
Well, see, here's the thing. Here's the catch-22 for me. We always talk about the student athletics experience, right? And we want to give these
and
guys,
you hear that a lot.
You hear that an awful lot. It's become our swan song. And if we're so concerned about the student athletes experience, let's do this. Okay, you guys want everybody to come in and play. How about those programs in particular? There are 4 that I'm thinking of that are pretty much invested financially in baseball. Let's create the Robin Hood theory. Those that can afford to go with the 11.7 or have financial backing, how about we take some of our budget and lend it to the Pine Bluffs and to the valleys of the conference so everybody can have a wonderful student athletic experience as far as competition. Let's take away some of our money and give to them. But they would cry bloody murder if you do that, man. They got to try to figure that thing out. It's just like the competition of life. You got to figure it out. You're not going to be rewarded something just because you showed up. You know, there was an old comedian talking about a guy was boasting and right. Well, I pay my child support. Well, whip-de-doo. You made them. Take care of them. Take care
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
So I get all that, and it creates a monster. It truly creates a monster that these guys and girls will be expecting to be handed stuff just because.
And next weekend, softball tournament starts. We'll give you a little information on that as well. Um, I've just always been big on the regular season and teams that have, stood the test of time over a period of time, and
Right.
they've done well.
Right.
Reward them in a tournament. And I remember, those 16 double eliminations. Man, you had some legendary games played, and just me. Hopefully, going forward, the people of influence, they will sit down and say, how can we make it better? And I
Well,
think that's what I think you do. You look at it over a period of time and see what's the best way you can get it done and have a healthy debate and discussion on it.
Well, here's where I think the crosshairs come. We think when we say the terminology "make it better," making it better does not necessarily mean making it easier. Because if that's the case, let's make it better for the student athletes experience that all they need to be eligible is a 1.0. Okay?
What?
A 1.0.
You're being facetious, right?
I'm being very facetious, but what I'm saying is, hey, we're talking about the student athlete's experience, right? We're giving this guy, he has a gift and a talent to play, and in this case, Division I athletics. So let's reward this guy, because he's a hard worker. Little Johnny just, he needs some encouragement. So let's lower it to 1.0. And let's let little Johnny go in here and do whatever he needs to do. Let's not discipline little Johnny. Let's not try to correct him when he's wrong. We need to be sensitive to little Johnny's needs. And I'm all for supporting. I've been a child's advocate for almost 30 years in my life. Okay. But at some point, you have to set a standard to everything. And when you lower the standards, you ought to lower your expectations. And we don't think about lowering our expectations.
Well, Dr. Prince, is going to be very interesting. I answered somebody back in a text message. I said it will be 8 teams this year, and who knows for the future. But for this year, UAPB, and if you kind of look at how everything's going to be situated, what are the chances of Southern getting swept against Prairie View? Let me start there.
Well, there's always a chance. There's always a chance. And I'm going to be as honest as I could on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the greatest. I would have to give that about a 2 or 3 max, okay, of Prairie View sweeping Grambling. But there's always a chance. Theoretically, I would hate to see, or anybody hates to see a team celebrate clinching anything on your home field. So hopefully that'll be enough fuel for PV to come out swinging. Okay, but the realist in me, I'm pulling 1,000% for PV, but I could possibly see this thing going 2-1 in favor of Southern.
Well, I appreciate your honesty and your opinion, because that leads me into, I believe Southern will be the number 1 seed in the West, and they will take on UAPB, the 4th seed in the East.
And
Alabama State.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, it's just, let's just say hypothetically, because anything could happen in a tournament. Pine Bluff gets hot. They beat Southern University. They're advanced to the winner's circle. Then they beat whoever else they have lined up in the Cosmos. You got a possibility of a team that's currently 2-17 in conference play. If they advance anywhere, it is to me, a strike against the integrity of the conference. Number one, that they were allowed to come. And then number two, they could possibly be representing you in regional play.
That happens. Dressing black sackcloth and going on hunger strike.
But then here's somebody saying, well, chances are that won't happen anyway because they're not that good. If they're not that good, why should they be there?
Well, they've got to have 8 teams.
No, they're okay.
No, I'm just saying that.
Now you've been.
That's not me saying that. No, that's not me saying that. That's kind of the prevailing feeling that I'm getting. When Charles Epman comes on in hour 2, let's just put it out there. He texted me and said he talked to Omar Johnson because, of course, Alcorn State was hosting Jackson State, and and the text was he's adamant, got to have 8 teams. He doesn't see any other way, and also took a little shot there at Coach Kadar with quote unquote with that 4 teams in the SWAC tournament. So I'm guessing they had the discussion where, what do you think about 6 teams? What do you think about 4? Because we discussed it a little bit last week.
Right.
And so Omar, he's the coach of Jack State. He's entitled to his opinion.
This is true. Now, in comparison, in fair comparison, you have a 10 conference team structure. More than likely, teams 1 through 3 on both sides are going to probably be your upper echelon teams. And when we're talking about postseason play, you're splitting hairs between 3, 4, and 5. Okay? 3 and 4 could be a flip-flop, but more than likely 4 and 5 are not, in most cases, and I'm stressing most cases, not playing well enough. And when I say well enough, have at least a winning conference record to make it to postseason play.
The less, the better.
Well, it intensifies
quality of baseball.
Yes. It's just like, why don't we have a playoff for football? We take the top seed from the East, the top seed from the West, when in the last decade at least, the West have had more dominant teams. So if we're going to do it that way, how about we only play 10 games, the top 4 teams make it to the playoffs, number 1, or if just get rid of the divisions and 1 through 4, they battle it out, just like they do for the FBS. Let's do it like that and be done with it.
In other words, rank them 1 through 4, regardless of where you're at
East or West, and let them play.
Interesting. Well, the coaches will have their say so. They'll put their feelings to the AD. The ADs will come to. Well, I'm missing a committee in here. I know they have a committee.
You just said the key word, feelings. We need to get out of our feelings and let's be logical about this thing. Let's upgrade the play. Let's upgrade the brand with some greater expectations. 6
teams, double elimination.
6 teams.
I stand by that statement.
Because our double elimination is not even a true double elimination.
Yeah.
You're talking about a student athlete's experience. You, the number 1 seed, you've beat everybody in the tournament. I come through the losers bracket and I beat you one time, I'm declared the champion. What about your student athlete's experience?
Good point.
Saying, man. I'm drinking coffee this morning because I'm rather calm today.
Oh, well, it's gonna be all right. What can Brown do for you?
Go ahead on, sir.
Well, it'll continue to be a topic, and until things are settled. One, we have to see what the conference will decide. As far as I'm thinking, Monday you'll have an announcement.
Well, here's a scary thing, Brother Brown. If you've yet to have any discussions, and I don't know, but the last time we had the commissioner on, they hadn't even talked about the future of the tournament on where it would be after this year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hadn't had any discussions, more than likely you're going to take the latter of the two. We'll just add Pine Bluff because it's easier, less paperwork to shuffle or whatever the case may be. And que sera. Everybody will be happy, and it is what it is. Everybody be happy from the coach's point of view. Because what happens, win, lose, or draw, you get to say, hey, we've made it to postseason play X amount of years. And after that becomes a negotiating tool when it comes on the backside of your contract.
Yeah. Student experience, you're going to hear that term a lot. Financially, we know what the commissioner said from now on with the championships. It's going to be which city can put forth the best package and that the Southwestern Athletic Conference can benefit from financially. So we will see. We haven't talked about switching gears here, but congratulations to Prairie View A&M's Quentin Bell, 7th-round pick by the Oakland Raiders. Darrell Johnson of North Carolina A&T, a 7th-round pick for the Buffalo Bills, and Joshua Mills, a 7th-round pick to Arizona Cardinals. Trey Smith, formerly of Miles College and Southern University, gets an invite to the Indianapolis Colts. I was listening to some national shows and then some local guys. In some instances, it's better to sign as a free agent where you have a choice of what's the best opportunity for that individual player than a 7th-round pick. But we got to give congratulations because they did get picked, but that's a whole nother topic.
Well, it's a financial difference, too. And also, before I make this comment, we want to give a congratulations to Anthony Stubbs, defensive back for the Panthers. He just signed a free agent deal with the Cleveland Browns. But the difference, do you know what a 7th-round draft choice salary, base salary is?
I wouldn't think it's that much.
$2 million. You know what their signing bonus is? $111,000. You know what a free agent is thankful just for the invite, and they might get a little pocket change, but there's a big difference. So you can say what you want to say. I'm thinking of, what's his name, Shannon Sharp. He was a 7th-round draft choice. He's a Hall of Famer. You got what I'm saying? So they'll look at you a little bit longer if you've been drafted because there's some money invested in you. So they can say what they want to say. I'd rather be a 7th round than a free agent any day of the week.
I'd rather get there, make it, show what I have.
Oh, no
and
doubt.
Then that next contract, I'll be able to bust a bank.
Well,
if I prove myself, in steps. But I understand what you're saying. 7th round, hey, you thought maybe like Darrell Johnson maybe would have went a little earlier, but hey, at least he got picked.
You got picked.
And I saw him play.
Yeah, you got picked. And remember, we're only talking about 2% of the entire nation's collegiate football player make it to this next round. And I'm going to include those free agents as part of that 2%. So that's a blessing within itself. You understand that the talent level that you had was warranted enough to at least get an invite. So let's rejoice over that, and let's try to make the most of every opportunity that presents itself to you while you're there.
I would agree with that because locally they had some kids that played at a Power 5 didn't get drafted.
Mm-hmm. Do you realize?
So they're free agent now.
Do you realize how we talk about the SWAC and the MEAC? We have a total of 4 players from both sides of the fence, from the MEAC and the SWAC, that got drafted. Over SEC, Big 12, Pac 12, Big 10 student athletes. Just think
Kudos.
about that. Just think about that. And man, you ought to be turning cartwheels if you are any type of HBCU supporter. And I don't care if they went to Texas Southern, even though PV had 2 drafted and Southern didn't. I'm just messing with you on that one. You know I love you. But
Come on.
but no, in all fairness, man, this is where I talk about SWAC pride, HBCU pride. Because
Now, get in there, work your butt off.
And Titus, brother Titus Howard, the way these folks been hating on him in Houston, I want every time he knock one of them jokers out, he bring a snot bubble to the surface. I'm going to say that's what the SWAC is about. That's what the SWAC is about. And they can cry all they want, but that for the 23rd overall pick, the average salary is $10 million and a $5 million signing bonus. So, Brother Howard, let them crack, let them pout. You go to the bank and get paid.
And you can, I'm sure, talk to Armstead. He I'm sure he heard the same thing.
Yeah.
And look, went in, played, got better. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. Because if you look at the history of the NFL, some of your best players of all time in certain positions went to HBCU.
Yes, all
so hopefully,
go to the Hall of Fame. Go to the Hall of Fame and look at all them brothers that come from the SWAC. Look at all them. You know, one of my favorite Steelers of all time happened to be a great Southernite, Mel Blount. You got what I'm saying? So go ahead on and talk that noise. That's why, Carlos, I applaud what you do. I applaud what everyone does that's connected to the HBCU world of sports. And man, let's continue to blow our trumpets and beat our drums. And as long as we can support each other, the word is going to get out there, the message is going to get out there, and we're going to continue to do what we do until the Lord calls us home. So keep moving, brother. Keep it going.
And on that note, I just got a message here. Let me see if I can boy, this last name is just interesting. Former Cal State Fullerton center Amel Kuchovic is transferring to Southern University at verbalcommits.com on Twitter. Just got this alert. And speaking of that, Southern welcomes Monteith Blake, 6'1" combo guard from Atlanta, Georgia, Miami-Dade College. Sean Woods doing some work behind the scene. Brother Prince, when one school does well, it's good for everybody in the conference.
It is.
You want competition. We just can't hand the title to Prairie View, Texas Southern on the men's basketball side every year. And it's going to be interesting to see what Prairie View, Coach Smith, outstanding job. We'll see what happens. Texas Southern.
Smith.
Oh, boy, it's going to be good.
Smith does an excellent job. He'll take guys that when they hear who they've picked up, they're like, well, who is that? And where they come from? But Smith picked guys that are quality guys off the court as well as on the court. These are guys of responsibility, and these are guys that fit his team concept and goal. Is team first, player second. And I can say that been monitoring Smith closely since he was an assistant, and he has always been one for team. And if you think you're bigger than the team, we don't have room for you.
On that note, got to take a time out. When I come back, Jim Kleinpeter will get his perspective on this Southern University baseball team. Let's just be honest. They're getting ready. They have a series against Prairie View. Then everybody has that down time. Then it'll be SWAC baseball tournament time. And by the way, let's just put this out here. Who wins the 2019 SWAC baseball tournament? Who are your favorites?
Prairie View.
Who are your I tell you what, another hunger strike there. But hey, you know what? You never know. Team gets hot and gets the plan and plays the best that they played all year, it can happen. But I'm going to say this, being consistent from the beginning to the end puts you in a great position. You know, and another question I got, Jackson's coaching in his first tournament. Okay, that's true. But Southern's been consistent. This will be an outstanding tournament. You have potential games between Jackson State and Texas Southern. Grambling State, who someone says until they get it done, we'll see. But I think this term is going to be exciting.
Oh, it's going to be exciting. And for the record, you asked me who was my favorite. And I said Prairie View.
Okay. All righty. Who is your dog horse team?
Who's your
Who's
favorite?
the team to watch out? You know, I'm going back to Texas Southern because Coach Rob, I'm telling you, he'll have them prepared. Who has the better pitching? Who has pitching depth? Who can muster up enough pitching? Who's bullpen that could come in and get some saves?
Texas Southern.
My favorites, Southern Alabama State. Watch out for JSU. You get my drift.
I got you.
On that note, take that time out. We get Jim Klein Peter coming up next, freelance sports writer. He covers Southern University. We'll get his thoughts on Southern University baseball. That's coming up next. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
Hello, this is Lonzo Hardy, Vice President of the SWAC Alumni Association. The SWAC Alumni Association is an organization founded in 1999 with the goal of enhancing the great legacy of excellence in the SWAC as well as preserving the athletic heritage of the SWAC. Its membership is open to former athletes as well as current and former coaches, assistant coaches, athletic administrators, referees, employees of conference member institutions, as well as fans of swac-sports. Individuals interested in gaining membership can contact the organization's president, Roscoe Nance, at 509 Worcester Street in Herndon, Virginia, 20170. Annually, the SWAC Alumni Association holds a Legends Award in which Lifetime Achievement Awards are presented. Occasionally, a legend of the conference is honored in a roast, and annually 1 or 2 former student athletes are presented degree completion scholarship awards. Contact the organization's president, Roscoe Nance, at 509 Worcester Street in Herndon, Virginia, 20170.
The birth of legends are storied in this conference. We must never forget our rich history. We now turn our gaze to the future. The new legends will emerge. New heroes to arise. The Southwestern Athletic Conference. Be our history.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show. Heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Today's first guest is Jim Klein Peter, freelance sports writer, covers Southern University. Jim, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
You doing okay?
I'm doing fine. It's a little wet out there, but
oh yeah. Oh. And Baton Rouge, it is pouring. It is pouring. A little break in the weather, but looks like round 4 will take place very shortly. Jim, speaking of shortly, Southern and Prairie View rained out yesterday, 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Game today, and then a doubleheader Sunday. For Southern University, 1 win, they clinched the Western Division title. Is that something Southern fans can look forward to this weekend?
Well, if they can get 3 games in, they shouldn't have any trouble winning one of them. Prairie View is limited pitching, and Southern can rake. So I would imagine, Prairie View was able to beat them in the Friday night game when they played in Baton Rouge earlier this year, and it was kind of a comeuppance for Southern. I think they were riding a 5-game conference win streak, and I think they got a little fat with it, and so they came back and they played ball the next 2 games and won handily. So this Prairie View team is just I don't think it can beat Southern 3 times anywhere. So they should be okay. And I like the idea of bringing Eli Finney into the weekend rotation.
That's a big move. Of course, most people know from this season the win against LSU. Pitching-wise, though, Coach Jackson seems to think that he's got to get a better performance, and he thinks that him and his coaching staff, they need to do a better job and getting pitchers prepared for the tournament.
Yeah, there were several things going on at Grambling, and really, you see what happened at Grambling. It was 2 games, and they just fell completely apart. They talked about there was an issue with the mound. The pitchers had warmed up on the mound and the bullpen, and there was a big difference between that mound and the one out on the field. And I think it maybe mentally psyched out the pitchers the first 2 days, but they took care of that the 3rd day. They took a little bit more time, getting used to that mound on Sunday. John Gwynns did. He spent a lot of time walking around it and looking at it and getting the feel for it, and it may have had something to do with it. And also, Grambling was a hot team, and they swing the bats almost as well as Southern. So I think that Coach Jackson is getting this. He's trying to get them convinced to throw strikes, not to be afraid to put the ball over the plate. Southern's got the best fielding team in the conference. They can run the ball down in the outfield, and the infielders, they don't make many errors. Tyler Laporte at third, and he's a good third baseman, and Malik Blaze at shortstop. I think I've seen him make 1 error all season. So, just put the ball in play. And then if, they happen to get some runs, the offense will usually score enough. So, it's a good strategy, and we'll see what happens. He may, Carrick told me that he might, in the 3rd game, he might go with the same 1 pitcher per inning strategy he used last week against Nichols.
Which was a 6-5, which was a 6-5 victory over Nichols State. Another good midweek win for Southern University baseball. So, Jim, if I'm hearing it right, pitching, he thinks that they can get better performance, do much better. Fielding, outstanding fielding team. What weaknesses is there for this Southern University baseball team that you think that could maybe get in their way of Southern winning a SWAC baseball tournament?
Well, I don't see any other than the pitching, and really, I don't think the pitching's been that bad. It's just not as good as their hitting and their fielding. And, they've got 4 guys. I think they're pretty solid with their starting pitching. They've got 4 guys that they feel confident sending out there, and that's really all you need. And they got so many guys in the bullpen. If they can get to the 8th or 9th inning with the lead, they've got the best closer in the conference in Connor Whalen. So, I don't see a whole lot of weaknesses. It's just the pitchers have got to stay sharp, and that's why I'm thinking it's probably a good idea for him like he said on Sunday, maybe going to that 1 pitcher per inning just to keep everybody fresh and working. And then they got 2 midweek games next week, but then they're going to have a long layoff. That's why I think he's doing this. After next Wednesday, they go to UNO Tuesday and Alcorn State on Wednesday, and then they're going to have 7 days off until the tournament. So that's it's a good idea to keep your pitchers fresh, and I don't see pitching as a real weakness. But when you get into the tournament, I mean, you've got to have your pitching lined up. You've got to have a good idea of who you can count on in what kind of situations. And I think they'll be okay there. They'll be playing on a turf field at Wesley Barrow. You're not going to see too many bad hops. I like their chances. I don't know. I really don't know what Alabama State has. They're running away with the East, but I like Southern to come through and win the tournament.
Visiting with Jim Klein, Peter freelance sports writer, covers Southern University. You do a little bit of all. Southern University, baseball. Will you be doing football next year and basketball, or? Yeah,
it's a good point, because I've just been talking to the folks at the Advocate about that. I'm set up to do football. I did football at the tail end of last year, and so I'm going into I did a little spring football, and I got to know Dawson Odoms a little bit, and he knows who I am. So I hope to do some Southern football from the get go. It's always fun to do it from the get go. You know the team a little bit better, and I think I'm looking at a team that a potential SWAC champion. I think they got all the pieces in place. They've got a lot of starters back. They got one heck of a quarterback. I was really impressed with them last year, with Darius Skelton, and if they can get their run defense set, I think they'll be good. And I look forward to covering some of the other sports too.
Yeah, well, there's going to be some big news as far as run defense. I'll just leave it at that for Southern University, because when you look at it, you think about Alcorn State. That's just been a thorn in the side. Grambling State. It's going to be very, very competitive. Jim, could I switch back to baseball quickly? I had Coach Banks on a few weeks ago, and I wonder, do you know if Coach Jackson, how does he feel about that layoff that they're going to have, between the end of the conference season and then the conference tournament starting? And do you think this is something that maybe they'll bring again to the attention of the commissioner's office about maybe starting the conference season, push it back 2 weeks or at least a week?
Well, I know Coach Jackson's going to say something. He doesn't like the idea of, the playing home and home only with your division. He wants to play a full SWAC schedule. He wants to play the East teams. Of course, this is cheaper because the travel is cheaper this way, but it's not a good way when you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and winning the winner of the conference tournament is going to be the representative in the NCAA tournament. They get the only automatic bid. So there needs to be, and he wants to have just 10 weekends, and everybody plays everybody, and you play home and home every 2 years. So instead of going home and home with Grambling, you go to Grambling this year, and you host them next year, and it gives you a better rendering of the strength of the conference. So. Plus, you wouldn't have this extra weekend open at the end of the year. You could just, every other conference does this, and if it means excluding, if it means Southern doesn't play one of the other teams every other year, so what? It's better this way. This is what the SEC does. Every year LSU does not play. There's one team from the East they don't play. But it's a much better. It gives you a much better idea of the strength of the conference. So he's going to push for that. I think he's going to continue to push for that. There's no reason to be playing some. There's no reason to have a bye week in the middle of conference, because then you have to go find another conference that has a bye week, and a lot of them don't. And Southern went up and played Memphis, and I know that helped them to go up and play Memphis, but it was also pretty costly for them. And so just play conference ball, and that's much. It's much better that way, I think.
Visiting with Jim Klein, Peter, freelance sports writer covering Southern University. athletics. If I asked, or if I made a comment from the bullpen perspective, who has the best effort in the bullpen after the starting pitching, would that team be in the finals or very successful in the SWAC baseball tournament? Do you think that would be the case?
Who has the best pitching? It's hard to say because I haven't seen it, but let's see, which team was that? Texas Southern has two of the best starters in the conference. And after that, after those two starters, they're a little bit sketchy. But Alabama State has the best overall ERA, I think, in the conference. And I haven't seen them, and I haven't really gone over their roster or looked at them. So I don't know. I would have to say Alabama State, but see, they haven't faced all the strong hitting teams like Southern and Grambling, and in their own team, as for that matter. So I don't know. Well,
and see, Jim, that's to the other point that you just made. If you had a conference format where, as you just stated, you get to play everybody, then you kind of have an idea about Alabama State. Now, I know they were down in the Andre Dawson Classic, but you don't see a lot of the teams. Southern may play Jackson State. They're going to play Alcorn. This will be their second time playing them. But you really don't know because you don't know a lot of the teams.
And I think it's really smart of Carrick Jackson to try to schedule like Alcorn State. At least he's got an idea what they look like. He's played them twice, so and he can get a feel. I don't know I don't think he played Jackson State, but it's good to do that, get an idea of the East. But this is something the conference office has to do, and baseball is a non-revenue sport, so the part of the formula with baseball is how can we save money, and that's one way to do it. Just by shorter travel. But I don't really think the travel's that different. It's a long way to Pine Bluff, and probably just as long to Pine Bluff as it is to anywhere in Alabama. So maybe we'll see some change there. I don't know. He seems to be pushing for it. I hope we can see that.
Yeah, to me and me and Dr. Prince have talked about it several weeks about what's, just some things we think would make it better as far as conference-wise. And I just wondered, I know Coach Banks mentioned it about him and Coach Jackson going to bring up some things, and I know they got to get the other coaches to buy in. A lot of times things are tradition, but I think you got to look at some things that maybe to change to make it better overall for the conference.
Yeah, this would help. I mean, Southern, when they go to Pine Bluff, they drive past Alcorn, they drive past Jackson State. I mean, it's crazy. It's just what happens is it's the outlying schools are always going to have to travel a long way. So, the Prairie Views and the Texas Southern and Pine Bluff. So I mean, you're kind of penalizing the conference. So don't do that. You got to. Arrange the schedule so it minimizes, how much each of the teams travel. There's ways to do that. And, I'm sure Carrick Jackson is going to be, having a meeting with Roman Banks over this and trying to get him to push hard for this the next time they have their conference meetings.
Yeah, that will be interesting, and hopefully, we'll see what comes out as far as information-wise as far as baseball in the conference. Last but not least, Jim, I appreciate your time as always. Injury-wise, Southern University, they had a few injuries. Where do they stand now with those injuries?
Well, the main one is Hunter David, and they've been trying to get around that. And I think Coach Jackson was telling me on Tuesday or Wednesday that hamstrings are funny, and the hotter the weather gets, the more fatigued the players get, and the more the injuries come into play. So they want to be real careful with Hunter, and I think it's very possible we'll see him in the tournament, but not before then. I doubt he'll play this weekend. And maybe they'll throw him out there. The thing is, when you're catching, you got to squat down, and that is really hard on your hamstring. And I think what Coach Jackson likes to do is he doesn't want to have one catcher catch all the time. He likes to split that stuff up because it wears you down and it hurts you at the plate. So he likes to catch Hunter David one game and maybe move him to first, and then he can juggle his lineup a little bit to get more speed into the lineup. So this is really the only injury I think that they're dealing with. He's had some pitchers that were hurt, but I think they're all healthy now. So we'll see. They're a much better team with Hunter David in the lineup. He bats in the top three, either the top four at least. He was batting cleanup for a while there, but they could definitely use his bat, and he helps them defensively. He's probably their best defensive first baseman. So we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get into the Alcorn game next Wednesday just to test him out a little bit.
Well, it should be interesting. I'm sure you'll be down at the SWAC baseball tournament. God says the same. I'll be able to check out some of the action as well. As always, appreciate the time, Jim, and we look forward to talking with you real soon.
My pleasure, Carlos. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Kleinpeter, freelance sports writer, covers Southern University athletics. Information, comments coming in. Thanks, VW. Jackson State, according to swac.org, 4.47 ERA, number one. Southern University, number two, 5.90. Alabama State, 6.41. Let's see. What else? Well, we're getting listeners kind of talking about SWAC baseball in the future in the tournament, and Coach Jackson, Coach Banks, Coach Jackson, they have something that they want to be able to kind of get some legislation, maybe to go to a different format during the regular conference season in baseball. Dr. Prince.
Hi, Captain.
It's interesting that the conversation is still going on about what can be done to help improve. It's interesting. And you remember Coach Banks talked about some things, and that Coach Jackson had talked to him. I guess the question is going to be, can he get enough other coaches to kind of buy into what he wants or what he thinks would be best for the conference? He's a newbie now.
Right.
I know there's a process, I know. And how does the other coaches, how will they feel about this?
Well, as you say, you don't know what will stick until you at least try and see what the results would be. I think if we're talking about advancing, and once again, it goes back to what we are going to be committed to. And I've been thinking about this, and I know what I'm about to say is going to probably stun a lot of people, but that's what good talk shows do, right? We stun people. We spend way more money in football because we know football is king, but we could have so much more success at baseball when we're playing in the upper echelon. And all we're talking about is just a flat across the board. Let's just say if each team was committed to $500,000 for baseball. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really not a lot. $500,000.
Well, my question would be,
yes, sir.
How many teams you think could participate with that amount?
Well, here's what I'm saying. We're going to go back to the student athletes experience, right? and I'm being facetious, but I'm being realistic at the same time. I spoke with a few other programs, and I'm not going to call them out because, you know, you don't want to embarrass anybody. But one program, the entire program, salaries and scholarships, total budget, $175,000. Another team I spoke to, total budget, $300,000. These teams are in that black hole state. Yeah, you have baseball, but it's like you're going through the motions. You're going through the motions. You have another program that was at $296,000 budget. Okay, and then you have another program that's at $500,000. Another program is close to $600,000. That's a disparity right there. So my whole point is this: since we're so gung ho about this student experience, do an average of what everybody's budget is, divided by 10, and just split it down the middle. But I know that won't happen. I'm just, I'm thinking and talking out loud.
Yeah, when pigs fly.
Right, when pigs fly. But what I'm saying realistically, some of the programs that are invested in football are spending way more money than they can get a return on. Because let's be honest, you can go 12-0, 11-1, and it's still not going to put you in the same conversation piece of a 9-3 Power 5 team. Yeah, they're 12-0, but if you go 40-15 in baseball, and you're talking about Division I baseball, that puts you at the table with everybody in the room.
And I think everybody would be in agreement that you've heard it over the years. Baseball in the conference, that could be the number 2 sport behind football. Mm-hmm. Now, some people may disagree with that, but you hear things like, well, baseball is it's a great chance that you can do the most damage with baseball past the conference play in the regionals.
Right. I read an article this week, and I even commented on my show, where they let out the votes of how the conferences voted as far as this third-paid assistant. And there were 36 against, and I think 23 or 25 for it, and 3 abstained. But what I found very interesting in this piece, they said, well, we knew that the MEAC and the SWAC was going to vote against it because they don't have any money. And that's a half truth. Well, our budgets are not, number one, our programs or our conferences are not the only ones that struggle with baseball. Baseball has been a struggle financially across the board, but it still does not stop other institutions from investing in baseball. Okay? And number 2, it's not that you don't necessarily have the money. We won't spend the money that it takes to be consistently competitive from top to bottom in baseball like we do in football or even basketball for that matter. We'll spend money on a football program, and we don't even get invited to the FCS playoffs. But we'll spend more money toward that, chasing that dream, and I'm all for fine facilities across the gamut. But if we're really talking about making an impact and shaking up and raking up the rest of the nation through athletics, baseball is your ticket. Take it serious, man. Take advantage of it because they are trying like mad to create those degrees of separation. They're going to come back with another bill that they want to run across. And
yeah, they'll do it in 2 years. They'll have to wait.
Yeah, but I'm saying they're going to go back feverishly. Oh, man, they were talking about how they were disappointed in some other conferences, and the Coaches Baseball Association had vested in these conferences. Then it makes you want to think, well, are they getting extra bids because some type of backdoor action with the College Baseball Association? what's going on. And then if we're talking about getting more credibility and respect, we're going to have to do those things. You've heard me talk about the interdivisional play between the East and the West teams. You're going to have to stack up some of your games. Stop playing some of these fancy schools that we struggle with sometimes. And let's play each other, and let's play some other quality D1 programs.
The bottom line is, how do you make baseball, which has so much promise in the conference, how do you make it better? I think it starts from the coaches and all who needs to be involved, get the information, see what's the best way to get it done, because you have so much potential. Sometimes potential is a dirty word,
right,
to some. But yeah,
make it better.
Get it done.
You make it better by investing. If I were to go to say 25 to 30% more than what you're doing right now into your programs, if everybody just committed to the crawl stage of 25 to 30% more investing in baseball, that's step one to making it better. Step two is how we schedule our games. Besides your conference games, you schedule your games that, I want some wins, but I need to be competitive. I need to step up my RPI where it takes a whole look from top to bottom of the entire conference. When we're playing each other, that is going to increase some RPI. When you're playing other quality conferences, that's going to improve your RPI. And how you structure your tournament is going to increase your RPI and credibility for the entire baseball nation.
We'll see what happens after this season's over and they have their meetings. Let's see if some of this will gain some traction. Boy, we've got some interesting. We got a conversation going on by a listener when we were talking about free agents. Mm-hmm. I'll have to read that in hour number 2. Just got a question for you, Dr. Prince, that we'll give it to you in hour number 2.
Okay.
And, boy, that's good. Get the conversation going. That's what I'm talking about. Hour number 2 is coming up. We will talk with Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network, our SWAC Baseball Report. I listened to Charles yesterday on the broadcast. Alcorn loses to Jackson State 13-6, I believe. 13-6. And Charles says the seedings are set. Basically, you're just waiting on the conference to say UAPB will be the 4th seed in the East. Other than that, you'll have it laid out. You already know basically who's going to play who. But there are potentially some interesting games right off the bat. And that's with 8 teams. Just think if it was 6, you would even have some just dynamite games. Yeah, they played already. Some of these teams, some they haven't. But the SWAC baseball tournament in New Orleans. Dr. Prince, are you going to be able to make it, or?
So far, so good, man. Looking like I'm going to be there with bells on. We're going to possibly be there between Wednesday and come back Friday. So we'll be in position so we can take care of a production of a certain show. I'm not real sure. That Carlos Brown show. You heard of that one?
Yeah. Get a chance to travel a little bit there. And I'll promise not to have a big entourage.
Hey, man, have as big as entourage as you are. You at home?
That's when I go to Jackson. I always got to have a huge one.
Yeah.
Always got to have a huge one. Jackson State. Wow. Let's go to break. Coming up next, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network SWAC Baseball Report. You're listening to the Carlos Brown Show on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com.
One voice. It can get the point across, but it only carries so far. Add a voice. It's richer, louder, but that has limits too. Add a third voice. It's even more powerful. Add another, and another, and many, many more. And we are stronger than ever. That's the power of a community coalition. They help community groups, faith groups, civic organizations, PTAs, employers, and many others in your community organize their resources and focus them where they're needed most, like fighting to keep kids away from drugs. Ask a group that you belong to if they should belong to a community coalition. It's easy to get involved. Visit helpyourcommunity.org and they'll tell you exactly how your group can help. That's helpyourcommunity.org, because you get more when we get together. Brought to you by the Office of National Drug Control Policy and the Ad Council.
As a dad, you'll probably spend years teaching your son how to hit a baseball, how to throw a tight spiral and hit a receiver, how to spring off a diving board and hit the water, how to hit a 1-wood and a 9-iron, how to hit the bullseye, how to hit the strike zone, hit a jump shot, hit the open man, hit the hockey net, and maybe the most challenging of all, how to hit the books. But the question is this: how much time will you spend teaching him what not to hit? Teach your son early and often that all violence against women is wrong. For tips on what to say, visit endabuse.org. Brought to you by the Family Violence Prevention Fund, the Waite Institute for Violence Prevention, the Ad Council, and this station.
Broadcasters come into our lives on radio and TV, bringing us information and entertainment. Broadcasters are there for us, but who is there for them when they fall on hard times? The Broadcasters Foundation of America provides financial assistance to broadcasters in acute need due to a critical illness, accident, or other serious misfortune. If you know of a broadcaster on the air or behind the scenes who may need our help, please share our message. Visit broadcastersfoundation.org.
Drivers and bicyclists both have the right to be on the road and travel safely. And when we're on the road together, safety is a shared responsibility. State law requires drivers to maintain at least 3 feet of clearance when passing bicyclists. And bicyclists should always ride with the direction of traffic and follow all traffic signals. It's safer. It's courteous. It's the law. A message from the Regional Planning Commission Pedestrian and Bicycle Program.
How you doing? This is Mike Prince, the radio guy. I want to thank you so much for joining us on our daily content and programming, and serve as a reminder that you can listen to the Carlos Brown Show live here on the network 10 a.m. to 12 noon Central Standard Time each and every Saturday. Carlos Brown is a seasoned, legendary sports talk show host based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, but we're not going to hold that against him. Join the Carlos Brown Show live on the Open Mic Broadcast Network 10 a.m. to 12 noon.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Our next guest, second guest of today's show, Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network. Charles, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Baseball being played at Alcorn today?
I'm waiting for a text from Coach Richardson right now. I talked with him yesterday. He said today could be a wash. I know I'm at the house now. I'm an hour from campus, and it's been raining the last two and a half hours. And I'm sure on campus it's probably the same. My guess is it's probably going to be a wash. They're going to try to take the tarp off. I did see a text that they're going to try to take the tarp off around noon. But if it's raining, there's no way that's going to happen. It just gets to a point in which, game's supposed to be at 3. It's commencement today, this morning. I'm sure they got that in despite the rain. I think it gets to a point in which it's just not enough time to get done what you need to get done today. And you got to be smart about it. And, if you play a doubleheader tomorrow or even one game tomorrow, I mean, it really doesn't matter. I mean, I think that's the one thing about it that's kind of taking the pressure off of this thing is the fact that the standings on the eastern side are set. You know the seedings. On the west, Southern still has to win another game to at least share the regular season title. And if they win two, they win it outright. They'll be the one seed with a victory. So I think that's the only drama really on either side. And, of course, we'll see what happens with Pine Bluff. The conference will determine that. But, we played one last night. If we can get one more in between today and tomorrow, I think it'll be a good thing. If not, then we just try to finish out the string.
I was thinking early in the week when I answered somebody back from last week's discussion, I didn't get a chance to address him personally. But you guys, you remember the 100% rule, right?
Right.
and I'm laughing because it for so many years it was like, that's crazy. No other conference in America has a 100% rule, where 100% rule means games lost to the weather, you have to make them up. You have to have 100%. Then they changed it to 80%.
Right.
And I remember a good friend of yours, Coach Kadar, Charles, he was adamant about that. He didn't like that rule. And lo and behold, we communicated through a text message, and I'd like for you to share, and I think it's still on target what we were talking about. Yesterday with Omar, Coach Omar Johnson at Jackson State, talking about the only thing you can do is add University of Arkansas Pine Bluff to the tournament because you're supposed to have 8 teams.
Correct. Coach Johnson was talking with our coach, Brett Richardson, and I got a chance to speak with him a little bit. And, he's of the belief that, 8 teams. He's of the belief of 8 teams in, and he said the only thing you can do is to allow Pine Bluff in. Now, where they would be seated, logically, realistically, because you have 2 teams in the East that's not eligible, you would have to put UAPB on the eastern side of the bracket as the 4th seed in the East, and that means they would take on probably Southern in the first game, which would be interesting. But he's of the belief of 8 teams, and he just believes from a student-athlete perspective, student-athlete experience, you have to do that. Now, we know Coach Kador was not for 8 teams, and he even mentioned the fact that, he still remembers the history between him and Kador, the philosophical differences. Kador's 6'7", and Omar Johnson's about 5'6". So you can imagine how that conversation went.
Yeah,
Omar looking up to Kador, and Kador looking down to Omar. So it's, but Omar Johnson's kind of old school. He's of the belief of 8 teams, and right now you got 8 teams. The only thing you can do is logically, allow UAPB in despite their poor record, and just kind of play it out from there. But the conference will announce. I was told probably Monday or Tuesday. My guess is that they're going to give us all the situations with baseball. And I think the only reason why it hasn't been done already is just my guess. I think they want to dot their I's and cross their T's. And also, with the seeding, Southern still hasn't locked up officially the number 1 seed yet. If they stumble at Prairie View this weekend, Grambling could possibly be number 1. So I think they want to let all the smoke clear, let all the seedings kind of play out, because that's the only drama left. And then the conference will probably announce it Monday or Tuesday. My guess, I don't know for sure, but UAPB in, 4th seed in the East, you got your 8 teams, and you just kind of go from there.
So as you said, like there's a lot of drama there, huh?
Well,
other than Prairie View.
Well, look, it's.
I'm picking at Dr. Prince.
Yeah. Look, you still have to play the games.
That's true. Anything could happen.
You have to play the games in Southern. This is for the first time in a few years, first time under Coach Jackson. There's a little bit of angst to try to finish the deal. Southern's done everything right, but officially they haven't locked up the Western Division. They beat the number 8 team in the country, LSU. They played well at times. Last weekend against Grambling, it was kind of a push and a pull. But you expect that this time of year. It's not going to be easy, and it shouldn't be easy. Coaches have told me that in baseball. If it's easy this time of year and you think it's easy, you're fooling yourself, because in the tournament it's not going to be that way. So, hey, Southern has to finish. They got to get to the finish line, and they have to get it done against Prairie View. On paper, they should, but that's why you play the game. So we'll see how that shakes out. I mean, Mother Nature's playing a factor with that, and we'll see. But my guess, on paper, Southern's a better team. Prairie View, they've looked okay at times. They haven't looked okay most of the time. They're giving up a ton of runs. They're scoring runs, but Southern's the better team. We'll see. I mean, they have to get it done.
We're visiting with Charles Edmond of the Alcorn State Radio Network, discussing SWAC baseball. With that being said, can we just kind of project then a little bit? I don't think it's that hard. Let's say Southern looks up and win one game. They're the Western Division champ.
Correct.
Grambling State. Dr. Prince is laughing back there, but now I just got to put it that way. I don't have the blue and gold glasses on that thick. So it'll be Southern against UAPB. Let's say that's the way they're going to do it.
Right.
And then you're going to have Alabama in another bracket, Alabama State taking on Prairie View. Correct?
Correct. 1 versus 4, correct.
Yeah. Then here's where the game gets, those 2-3 matchups are always very interesting. Grambling State and Alcorn, and then Jackson State and Texas Southern. And Charles, I just looked at the stat. Jackson State pitching, as it's better than it's been in a while. But when I talked to you, you said they cannot slug their way to a title. How do you answer that? Finally, maybe their pitching has been better.
Well, I'll just say this. It kind of showed itself a little bit last night. We faced Jackson State's best pitcher. He was Galatas. He was 7-3 on the season, more wins than anybody else on the staff, and we knocked him out after an inning and 2/3. But they had a kid in Lopez that went the rest of the way, and we couldn't get to him. We got impatient, and Jackson State just slugged their way to that win yesterday. They had 4 home runs, sprayed the ball around the park. That game yesterday was Jackson State baseball in a nutshell. It was 14-5, whatever it was. That's Jackson State baseball in a nutshell. They wheel you into submission by scoring a ton of runs. And when you score a ton of runs, you wind up being impatient at the plate because you're down big, and you wind up looking crazy at the plate, and it favors the pitchers. So, for Omar Johnson to pull his best starter after an inning and 2/3 was very telling that his number one starter just didn't have it. And that's how you get to Jackson State. You've got to get to their starting pitching early and get into that bullpen early, because they do run out of arms, quality arms, guys that don't pitch a whole lot. And I think for just about every team in the league, it's kind of the same way. But for Jackson State, it's a little bit more glaring. So I think, for them, they can score as many runs as they need. But if your pitching is depleted, it's just a matter of time before you can't score enough runs. I mean, we've seen tournament games 16-14. We've seen games 21-16. I think it was Grambling and Southern was the last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 21-16. That's. I mean, I hate to say it, that's kind of ridiculous. That just doesn't happen. But and that shows you just the depth of pitching, or maybe the lack of it, to where you don't have the arms to keep people off the bases. So I think for Jackson State, it's kind of the same thing. They can score 20 runs, but they give up 25. What difference does it make? And that's kind of where JSU is. But if they're up 8-0, 9-0, they're good playing from the front, because then you got to press, and that's the way Jackson State wants to play. And if they're playing from the front and they continue to hit the way that they've been hitting, they're going to be a tough team to beat. But I think it's going to be a chess match, though. I think Mike Robb's going to do everything he can to slow Jackson State down. I think if it's a low-scoring game like 7-6, 6-5, it favors Texas Southern. If it gets into the double figures, 12-6, 13-7, it favors Jackson State. We'll see. I think Jackson, it's just like a basketball analogy. Jackson State wants to play fast. Texas Southern wants to be in the half court, if you want to make a basketball analogy. And I think whichever team can impose their will is the one that's going to win. And I think that'll be an interesting matchup. But I'm also going to say this, Carlos. I'm going to go on record as to say that Southern UAPB game is going to be a little bit more intriguing than people might think. And I say that only because...
Oh, no.
I say that because, just step back and think about it. UAPB is playing with house money. They're not supposed to be here. they were counted out until, 3 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm. And I would put it on them like they shouldn't be there.
Yep,
if I'm Southern, right. I'd pound them into submission early. I would have the philosophy of killing a gnat with a maul hammer.
Well, that's true, but you've got a coach this is kind of a new thing. The SWAC tournament is a whole nother animal, as we all know, and we've seen the underdogs get it done. And I'm just saying that. I mean, there's going to be pressure on Southern because they've been the most, Jackson State with that 15-game winning streak, I guess you could say, DSU's been the most consistent team, but Southern has been pretty good all year from start to finish, especially in the conference. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on the Jaguars and what they can do. And so no one is paying attention to UAPB. No one thinks that UAPB can get anything done. And that's what makes it tough, because what pressure do they have? I do think there's a little bit of pressure on Southern because of the fact that they're one of the best 3 teams in the conference. So I think that, that dynamic in itself, the intangibles, what I call it, could make that game a little more interesting than people might think. Do I think Southern's the better team? Yes. Do I think Southern will win the game? Yes. But I do think early on it could be a tussle. It could be a little testy early on. And if Southern can get through that, relax, I think they should go ahead and they should be able to pull away. But UAPB's got nothing to lose.
How's the money, huh, Charles? UAPB. I'm trying to think of how I could answer that if they were to pull off the upset. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up on that one.
Well, think about it.
And I like Coach James. I've had him on a lot of times, but this year has not been a year.
Well, think about it like this. In most years, we always have UAPB as a team that can make a deep run, and they disappoint us all.
Oh, disappoint me, I know.
This is the first time that first of all, they shouldn't be in the tournament, but they're going to be in most likely. For the first time in several years, probably, that there's no pressure on UAPB, and that may be their ticket, because Carlos James has built that program into something in which people want to watch. But this year, nobody's watching them, and maybe they can relax a little bit and just have fun out there, and that could be the difference, I think, especially early on in that first game.
So if that happens, you should run for the mayor of Vicksburg.
I was just saying. I mean, look.
I understand what you're saying. Let me do this. I got a question from a listener for you and Dr. Prince.
Okay.
Would you ask Charles and Dr. Prince what they think about the baseball and basketball tournaments being played on the campus of the higher seed after the regular season, and should football stay that way? Were you able to hear it?
Yeah. I think, so you're talking about let's start with the basketball tournament. So you've got an 8-team tournament. So you're talking about the championship game being played, the highest seed, or you talking about the whole tournament?
Let's see. Baseball and basketball tournament being played on the campus of the higher seed.
So the whole tournament.
So I'm thinking baseball, the whole thing.
Well, for me, what you're seeing now, you're seeing some of these tournaments being played on SWAC campuses, something I never thought would happen. There's been, some pushback on that because there's this favoritism, this alleged favoritism. This is kind of old school thinking. But now you're seeing the football championships played on campus, the volleyball tournaments played on campus, track and field, softball, baseball has been on campus. So I think that, from a cost perspective for the conference, I think it would be a positive. I think with the new coaches that you're seeing in baseball as well as basketball, I think that there's a possibility that could happen, because it's already happening in some respects. So I do see it happening. It's just a matter of getting everybody, the coaches, ADs, and presidents on board with it. And I think it could work. It'll be good traffic for our campuses, to show our campuses off, to show the SWAC off. So I can see that happening, to be honest with you.
Okay, Dr. Prince.
Yes, sir. I personally believe that your baseball tournament could work because of the time of year that baseball is being played. Most of your campuses are being vacated for the most part as far as student bodies are concerned. So you can make some temporary arrangements even for your teams to have their housing there to help cut down on expense. Basketball, I think, needs to be at one central location just because of the dynamics of basketball and the structure that it could lay out monetarily. I think you keep that at one significant place. I believe football should go to the highest seeded team in the conference, and they host that event. So the only event that I would be in favor of having a, if you would meet me in St. Louis moment, is the basketball tournament. Let it be at your place. You promote that thing with the city that you're in partnership with and make it happen. Baseball can be done on the home campus. Now, the backlash is that people are going to be fussing, whoever the whole school is, that their staff is going to have to work extra and this, that, and the other. Well, these people get paid to do their work, and as long as they're getting compensated, they shouldn't be complaining about it. But I think it would create a great atmosphere, especially for the type of crowds that you could have for a baseball tournament compared to that of a basketball tournament.
And let me comment on football quickly because I didn't talk about football. I do think, it was a great success with Southern and Alcorn this past season. And, places like Southern, Jackson, Alcorn would be great. I think even, Prairie View, because we have the stadium size, Texas Southern if it goes to Compass. But my only concern is weather. I do think that it needs to be in an indoor venue if it's possible. I think that we were lucky that we had good weather for that Southern game for the championship, but if in December, you're looking at the first week in December, if the weather's not great, I just don't think on the long term our fans are just going to support it like that. I think in an indoor venue, New Orleans, and I think you mentioned that the high school championships are going to be at a different date to where the Superdome could be available. I still think Houston is a good venue. I think if it's an indoor venue in December, I think our fans will stomach it a little bit more, and they'll be more accepting of participating in the process. But I haven't seen anything to indicate that over the long term our fans are going to support an outdoor venue when the weather's not favorable. I hate to say it, but I think it's just reality. And, unless that changes, if it changes, hey, I'm good. But I think like we just saw for the championship game, it was good weather, great fan base in Southern Alcorn, of course, so the game was great. But if the weather wasn't what it was, would you still have that if it were other schools that were hosting? So I would say for the football championship, an indoor venue.
And I would, not that we're going to make this a candidates debate, Mayor of Vicksburg, but I think the weather, whether it be indoor or outdoor, is going to determine if people come out, period. I think that you need a venue that's going to fit. When you look at the Southland, they play their event outdoors up in Fresno. I think we've been using that as a crutch too long. If the people are going to support, they're going to support. And if your home team, let's just say, for instance, if like you said, it was a good crowd because of Alcorn and Southern, okay? And then people say, well, what if Mississippi Valley hosts the event? Well, if Mississippi Valley hosts the event, number one, they deserve to host the event because they beat everybody else in the conference. And guess what? If it be majority Mississippi Valley fans that show up, then so be it. My thing is, we talk about whether it's indoor or outdoor, we're talking about football, for crying out loud. It's football. If it rains, okay, we adjust. If it's cold, we adjust. I know that people become finicky, but I believe that if it's my home school, if it's my alma mater in the championship game, and it's one of those rare opportunities, or if it's a frequent opportunity, I'm going to make the necessary preparations. I'm going to bundle up, and guess what? If it gets too cold, I'll go home. But I think we shouldn't let the weather dictate. So what happens if we're playing a regular season game and it happens to be 22 degrees, like say for the Thanksgiving Bowl with Alabama State? Do we cancel it because it's too cold? We have to go forward with the game, and we have to set the expectation for the fan. The fans say this is what they want, then come out and support it.
I do agree with that. I totally agree. I'm just saying that just based on what I've seen lately from these games in which the weather hasn't been the best, I just haven't seen the turnout. And if it changes, hey, I'm all for it. I'll be glad to come on here and say, hey, the fans have moved past that. But I just think just what I've seen lately here, if the weather's inclement, and yeah, it shouldn't stop you. You know, you bring your parka, you bring your poncho, and, you know, you come out and support. When LSU plays Alabama, I don't care if it's a severe thunderstorm. It's going to be 100,000 people down there at LSU. It doesn't matter. But unfortunately, just based on what we're seeing right here and right now, our fans just don't support it like that. Could it change? It absolutely could, and I hope it does. But based on what we're seeing right now, I don't see it as of yet, and I'll be more in support of if it does happen.
Okay, is weather a problem? Why they don't show up at the basketball tournament?
Is weather, well, I don't.
No, it's inside.
It's inside, and the people are barely showing up to that. It boils down to us as fans and supporter of our beloved conference to stop making excuses and show up.
Yep. I mean, I do agree with that. I agree that we should show up and show out and support. I totally agree with that. But I just look at the numbers, and maybe that could be a poll question as to why they don't. They don't like the venue. They don't like the city. There are reasons why. I mean, there are a bunch of excuses. There's no question about that. But it's just everybody has their own preference and how they want to spend their money, because that's basically what it comes down to. A business is trying to separate you from your money, and the question is why fans don't want to support the basketball tournament if it's in an NBA venue, or even when it was at the Houston HISD facility, or whether. I'll say this. We were talking about baseball. You know, the best place for me, and I've given my top three, I think when the tournament was at Southern University, it was the best place for it. The venue, the crowd, I think money was made when it was there. I mean, the tournament has been as far west as Fort Worth. I was there. The tournament has been as far east as Birmingham. I was there. Fort Worth wasn't a good selection.
No,
Birmingham was not a good selection. I think you have to look at places like Jackson, Baton Rouge, Biloxi, New Orleans. I think those are my top four, and I think those places would thrive because of the weather, the venue. And I just think when it was at Southern University, and maybe it was a connection because Southern was pretty good at that time. But I just think that venue, I think weather, I think just atmosphere. I mean, I think all that plays a factor. And I think that if you have those things going, I think you can have great camaraderie. I think you have great crowds and great turnouts.
No doubt.
Well,
and it goes. I'm sorry.
I'm gonna add this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna add this, and I'm listening to both of you. I'm gonna go back to what Dr. McClellan said. Is going to be the highest bidding city. Whoever puts forth the best financial package, that's where it's going to be.
Well, how about this one, guys? How about this one? We talk about rewarding the top seed. We're talking going back to baseball, rewarding the top seed. Making the regular season mean something, right? How about that top team host the event? How about that? It did.
Come out. Football or baseball?
No, baseball. The top team, just like you do for football, the top team host the event and let the chips fall where they may. Whoever
Are you talking about the whole tournament?
The whole tournament. Yeah, the whole tournament. The entire tournament. Give you something extra motivated to fight for. That's what they do with the super regionals. You're fighting and clawing.
Yep,
Now
super and the regional.
Now these regular season games, and especially if we're talking about doing these interdivisional games, now everything is at stake. Everything is going to matter, and you're going to get the most out of every team, out of every player, out of every coach, from beginning to end. So let the top team. Hey, what's at stake? We get to stay at home. Everybody has to come to us because we're the top dog this year in the conference.
It makes me think now, I wonder if the city of Baton Rouge will put a bid in for baseball.
Well, if we're going to talk about economically consciousness, I won't say cheap, but economically consciousness, baseball tournament, in most cases, for majority of the schools that are at conference, have had their commencements for the most part, correct?
Yeah, I think Southern's coming up.
Right.
Yeah, ours is today.
Right, but what I'm saying, Prairie View is going to be on the 11th. But what I'm saying is the conference tournament doesn't start till May 15th, so a week after the fact. Now, we're talking about working. It's going to take some coordinating, but everything worthwhile takes some coordinating. You work it where you have dormitories or whatever apartments available that they're cleared out for getting ready for the next semester. All you would need is one building, and whatever the recommendation or accommodations would be for that, you have your teams stay on the campus. That way everybody is safe, won't run around, be having no problems. The parents can stay at some of the local hotels, and it's an effort that could be win-win for everybody involved, and everybody bring their expertise to the table, and it can be a grand event if we coordinate it.
Well, that's going to be interesting. The commissioner, he's going to take the recommendations from the coaches, athletic directors, the committee. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I've been on here tooting about 16 double elimination and baseball, football. I happen to believe it's going to be at a neutral site. I could be wrong. All this is intriguing. How quickly will we know before this calendar year is out? Does anybody know?
In terms of baseball?
All the sports.
Oh, I would think. I would think probably probably in the next year or so. I think you'll have all those kinks ironed out. I think that right now this is what, May. You have your meetings coming up in May this month. I think you could possibly put some things in place during the course of the summer. I understand. I was talking with Coach McNair. I think there was a meeting coming up. I think the spring meetings will probably be determined whether or not the football championship will be on campus or at a neutral location. But then you got the other sports that have to kind of get in line as well. So I think within the next year or two, I think you'll see a master plan on that. I would like to. I'm just kind of torn in terms of, should we bounce this thing around? Should it be in one location? I know Birmingham's building a new football facility. Should it be in Birmingham? Should it be in Houston? I'm talking about football. Basketball, should it be in Houston? There's a lot of questions in terms of where the tournament should be and what makes sense financially. And I think what Dr. McClellan is saying, whatever makes sense money-wise, and I think what makes sense money-wise might not be what we potentially want personally, but if cities are willing to pony up the money to have the SWAC, then I think those are the ones that, it may not be what we think. I think we get caught up in the cities and having fun. And, I like New Orleans. I think you can't go wrong with New Orleans. Personally, that's just that's Charles Edmond talking, because I like New Orleans. But I also think, as far as baseball, I think what we saw at Southern, and I'm kind of old school. I think that atmosphere is the best that I've seen, and I've been doing the tournament since 1995, when it was a swac-sports festival, in which you had tennis, track, baseball, softball, all that in one city. We've come a long way since then. But I just think in terms of atmosphere, attendance, participation, camaraderie, just all of that, I haven't seen any other place other than Southern University. Now, is that attitude still there? I mean, that's what Coach Cador's job is to find out. And we'll see what he brings to the table. But I think it'll be interesting for these other sports. I think Alabama State hosting softball. I've been to the softball tournament. I think the Barbara Williams Complex is excellent for softball. Volleyball at Jackson State. I think that's a good deal. I think, Carlos, you could possibly see more of the smaller sports, the championships being on campus. But the big question is football. The big question is basketball, probably more so than anything else.
And to add to that, that's part of the dilemma right there, Brother Charles, is because they've yet to even discuss what they're going to do with baseball, and it's all being focused on football and basketball. And nothing wrong with that because we understand the revenue sports. But because of that attitude is why baseball is not become the revenue sport that it could be, because we're not investing in it for its long term. It's a quick fix. Let's do this for now. And 3 years later, we're having these same discussions, going back, trying to figure out what's going to be the next best move for the non-revenue sports. Now, I've done the softball tournament at Alabama State the past couple of years or so. And like you say, it's a great event. And they got one field, and they all work it out and do what needs to be done. The same thing can be done with baseball, okay? If it's at Southern, if it's at Jackson, if it's at Prairie, wherever the case may be, okay? If that's what we're going to do, that still saves money, and that institution will benefit. Yeah, they have to put in a little bit more work, okay? But one of the things about it is coordinating and say, okay, this is what I need from this campus, that campus, that campus, then we'll take care of it from this end on our campus. And it can be done. I've never seen where people of high intellect, of high caliber thinking, that we stumble at simple things such as coordinating a sporting event that could be a success all the way around.
Well, yeah, I think you have a commissioner, Dr. McClellan, who's forward-thinking, that I think can bring everybody to the table with, regardless of what school decides they want to host the baseball championships. I think he would put a team together from the conference level, and he'll put that on the table. And I think whatever school decides that that they're going to host the baseball championship, if it's that, I think he's the type that can bring it all together. I think that's where it starts. I think he can, with his leadership, he can help get it off the ground. So, I think we all have our own, picks and chooses on where we think these things should be. I've gone on record. I think Baton Rouge is number one for me. I think New Orleans is number two. No, I take that back, Carlos. I texted you. I said Jackson number two, Baton Rouge number one, New Orleans number three. Those are my top, and then Biloxi number four. Those would be my top four in terms of where I think the baseball tournament should be.
And most cities, I think, they have, like Baton Rouge has a sports foundation. You got to get them involved. You have, of course, the city parish form of government. You got to get them involved if that's something they care to do.
Yeah, well, at Southern, they had two fields. When was at Southern before, they had Goolsby Field as a backup, and they had Hines Field, of course, as the main field in case the weather backed things up. And, they did it for a day or two, and then they kind of got caught up. For softball, it was in Irondale, Alabama, at a facility in which they had artificial turf, and they had two fields in that complex, which you could have two games going at one time. And if weather backed things up, you had two fields, you can get caught up. And I thought that was terrific. But the conference wanted to go away from that facility. Maybe the cost of having the tournament there, drove the conference away, and that's why it's at Alabama State. But when it was at Irondale, it was terrific as far as I'm concerned. You could stand in the middle and watch two games at one time, and if the weather back games up, then you can get caught up. And that's my only concern as well as far as weather. I mean, you can't do anything about it. But when the weather plays a factor and these games get backed up, then, it dilutes the tournament just a little bit.
Well, I guess they will take all of that into consideration, but I'll go back to it's all about show me the money. And that's pretty much what Dr. McClellan said. Whichever city puts forth the best financial package, that's where it's going to be. Because I brought up Zephyr Field in New Orleans. He stopped me. Carlos, whichever city wants us there the most, they're going to make the best financial deal. So, I mean, I understand we all have our preferences, and but we shall see. We shall see what happens. So, with that being said, could it be Baton Rouge? Could it be New Orleans? Could it be Jackson? Last week, I had a message from a listener. He thinks that Dr. McClellan will make everything centralized. That was his opinion. So we shall see. Somebody will be happy. Somebody will not be happy at the end of the day. Interesting discussion as always. Unless they let y'all two make the decision. And speaking of, they still have conversations going on about it. Back to baseball quickly. Yesterday, the schedule. Here's some scores: Alabama A&M over Mississippi Valley State, 1-0. Neither team is going to participate in the SWAC baseball tournament. But Alabama A&M won that one. It was Arkansas Pine Bluff, a team that Charles says they're playing with house money. Watch them. I watched them lose 1-11 to Texas Southern yesterday. But boy, Charles, if that happens, boy, you'd be a rich man if you're betting. Alabama State loses to South Carolina Upstate 9-2, and Jackson State over Alcorn State 13-6. I guess the biggest win in the conference was Grambling State over Northwestern State 7-6.
Yep.
And of course, Southern and Prairie View was postponed. Guys, does Grambling State do they strike fear into anybody? Should they be a team that, hey, you got to look at it and say, watch out for Grambling State?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, Grambling lost a pretty good. He was a grad assistant, and Ryan Fuentes, who was their pitching coach, who's at Alcorn now, and he was pretty good with the pitchers there. But Grambling still is a team that can score a ton of runs. I mean, they scored, 14 against us here at our place a few weeks back. I think Coach Coop has that team playing with a lot of confidence. And, they won the SWAC tournament, and they're a team that some people are talking about, but I think Grambling plays a lot of heart, a lot of passion, a lot of confidence. And I think in the tournament, if you keep grinding, keep plugging away, I think that's a team that could be pretty dangerous in the tournament. So I wouldn't be surprised if Grambling makes a deep run. Grambling would be in the bracket with Alcorn, with Texas Southern, and let's see, it would be Alcorn, Grambling, Texas Southern. Who am I missing? Jackson State. So that would be a terrific bracket. You got Jackson, Grambling, big rivals there, and of course Alcorn. I think that would be an interesting bracket there if Grambling in that. But I think Grambling is a team definitely you cannot overlook. It will be to your peril if you do.
Well, I guess I would be at death's door because Grambling is a good team, but it's a psychological thing with me as far as Grambling is concerned. They, for whatever reason, just fizzle at big money games. Now, they proved me wrong against the Southern Series last week, taking 2 out of 3. But I want to see the consistency of them doing. And out of those paired up, when you talked about Grambling, Jackson, Texas Southern, and who was the other one? Alcorn. I could see them struggling against Jackson and Texas Southern. I could see the struggle there, but that's why we play the games. Out of those pairings, I would go in the order of a 1A, would be Jackson. 1B would be Texas Southern. 2 or 3, however you want to put it, Grambling, and then Alcorn. That's just from outside looking in. I believe that there are going to be some interesting games, as we've all pointed to. Pitching is going to be. And in those 4 squads that have been mentioned, my humble belief is that the order of pitching is how I selected these guys as far as pairing out of that division that'll be branched up for the tournament.
Oh, and speaking of, I forgot to ask this question. A listener says, can you ask Dr. Prince who spends the most on baseball in the conference, the top 3 or 4 teams? Do we have enough time?
Alabama State, Prairie View A&M University, Jackson State, then Texas Southern.
Repeat that again.
Alabama State, Prairie View, Jackson State, then Texas Southern.
Well, you know, which I'm not, if I'm a Prairie View alum, I'm mad as hell. I'm spending money and I'm not getting the results that I want.
Crickets.
Am I off base? Well, Alabama State has done with, and you know what? Speaking of that, let's see if I can pull up. Oh boy, Charles, and I think you saw it. The conference records last 2016 and 19.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I mean I can pull that one up. I may have deleted that one, but you look at. I'm trying to make the correlation between spending, who spends the most on baseball, but then when you look at the record, boy, I need to pull that up. But Charles, we did see Alabama State.
Yeah.
Record is pretty good.
Yeah.
Texas Southern. Who else am I missing?
Alabama State.
Grambling had a good record.
Yeah. I think of those top 4 teams, I think the head scratcher to me is Prairie View. And, you know, when they got rid of Coach Cullivan a few years ago, I was kind of surprised.
Mad Hatter.
I was kind of surprised because I think Coach Cullivan had enough cachet to be able to withstand some of the tough times that he had there. I know there was a change in athletic leadership, and I think Coach Cullivan just had a bad run at a bad time. But I think Coach Cullivan, in my opinion, did enough to be able to outlast that tough run and build the program back again. So Prairie View, at one point in time, remember Mike Robb was there, then Cullivan. I thought that Cullivan did a good enough job to where he probably should have still been there. I mean, even though change was made, Prairie View has struggled. But, you know, that's just kind of the way I saw that. Texas Southern's won. Jackson won back-to-back titles. And, of course, we know what Bama State has done. But I think the Bama State situation, though, Carlos, is going to be interesting because I think the bar has been raised there. You know, it's not just about making the tournament. It's about, at Bama State, you got to make a deep run in the tournament. And I would say bracket final at the least. If they don't get to a bracket final, considering what's being put in there, I think a lot of Bama State fans, and they're spoiled because they won. They won at a high level. They won some big non-conference games in the past with Coach Melendez was there. I think if you do anything less than a bracket final, I think it's a disappointment for Bama State. I mean, if they get to the championship game, which they did last year, and they were beat pretty bad there, but, you know, I think most years if they get to a bracket final, I mean, I think fans will be somewhat happy, even though you don't get over that hump, considering the amount of resources that's being put into that program.
Well, it's going to be interesting in this tournament. And take this in the spirit that I'm about to give it to you. Southern baseball, they had a rich tradition under Coach Kadar. Then we saw what happened at the end. Now you have a Coach Jackson that's trying to bring the glory back, and he's doing it much earlier than anticipated. I believe everybody would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I'm listening in this tournament, I'm not really hearing. It's like, well, Southern's done well, but let's see. And I'm kind of getting that vibe. And with Coach Jackson being in his first tournament, I think he's just a smooth character as far as knowledge and knowing baseball. I said all this to say they're not being talked about in the breath that, hey, watch out for Southern University. And I guess it may come if we look 3 years from now. If Southern's dominating, then I believe it will. Coach Jackson and Southern baseball will get his deserved credit. But at this point now, I think for Southern, it's just go out and still be consistent and try to bring home the tournament championship. If they don't, would it be a disappointment to me personally as a Southern alum? Not. You would be disappointed, but it's like what you're seeing now. You expect it to see 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah. And
they're doing it early, so I have to be even keel about it. You know, not too high, not too low. Just continue to be consistent. Am I making any sense at all, Dr. Prince?
Well, yeah, that's that St. Louis, Missouri show me state attitude of Coach Carrick Jackson. You know, hey, you guys didn't believe we can get it done. I'll take you 2 years, and I'll do it in 2 years. And you don't have to talk about me. It still doesn't stop the results that we're getting done. They in Alabama State, and I'll throw Grambling in for the most part, have been probably the most consistent programs throughout the course. And then forget Jackson State. Those have been your top 4 consistent programs. And when I spoke with Carrick Jackson, he was like, hey, man, this is what they offered me. I took it. I knew I could handle the opportunity. And he's riding with it. He gambled on himself, and so far he's winning.
Yeah, I got to watch a certain school in this conference, though. You know, I know what's going to happen. You don't fool me. Coach Banks, you get on the job ASAP.
Well, I would say this. For me, I'm glad to see Southern baseball halfway back on track. Whatever they could get out of the tournament, I think it's a bonus. But just to see Southern back in there, and they're playing an hour from their campus, I think it's a positive for Southern. I think it's a positive for the SWAC. And, you know, I don't expect them to go 2 and out. I expect them to have a pretty respectable run at this thing, even though I do think early on a UAPB game could be testy. I do think Southern will win the game, though.
Oh, Charles, you're killing me.
I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you.
Charles is killing me.
I'm just telling you. I might be totally wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll come on your show and say, hey, folks, I was dead wrong.
No, I'm going to call you at 12:01.
Yeah, call me at 12:01, Dr. Prince. Fans, you know, I'm on Twitter, Tall Man Radio. Just let me have it. I'll take it. I said it. You know, if
you have fallen into the disease I
fell
with UAPB years ago, remember?
I think UAPB will test Southern. Do I think Southern will win the game? Yes. But do I think it'll be easy? No. I'll put it like that.
Well, let me ask you this, Brother Charles. What do you think the over-under would be in a Southern Pine Bluff matchup?
Total runs?
Yes, sir.
I would probably say, I'm going to say 15.
15. Mm-hmm. That's your final answer?
Final answer.
I'll be tracking that one, sir.
I know they smoked him in game played this year. But, hey, you never know. Quickly, we got a minute and a half left. Charles, I believe, who are your favorites to be in the finals? I think you told me that.
Finals of baseball tournament. I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and Alabama State. I'm gonna go with Jackson State. There's just something about Jackson State. There's just, I think that Jackson State's gonna figure it out. I got Jackson State on one side, and I'm gonna stick with the SWAC champs. So I'm gonna go with Texas Southern. Oh, but no, they're going to probably be in the same bracket, so that wouldn't happen. I would go with Jackson State, and I would stick with Southern. I would go with Southern. I think Southern could, if they win that first game, and if they play with the confidence and the swag that they have been up until last weekend, I think the Jaguar Nation will be there. I think it'll be a great atmosphere in New Orleans. I would say Southern and Jackson State.
Well, I know somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose, and a smart guy like me, I'm going to just wait till next week and make my prediction. But we'll just say, Charles, that's your early pre-SWAC prediction. You'll have the right to change it after the brackets come out and what have you. Well, it's been fun, guys. We're out of time. Appreciate you, Charles. Have a great weekend, and I'll be listening to see if that baseball game will take place, but it's heading your way. Some more.
Yep.
Want to thank Dr. Michael Prince, producer extraordinaire, everyone who listened in, everyone who sent in text messages and listened. Appreciate you. Have a great rest of your weekend, and make sure you tune in next Saturday at 10 a.m. for another edition of the Carlos Brown Show, heard exclusively right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network and Spreaker.com. Peace and God bless.